So line of action beans, you're going to be doing beans with added lines of action. Line of action essentially means the invisible line that moves through the body's core movement or gesture. It usually aligns with the spine, but not always. Usually there's C's, slanted eyes. There's a lot of different methods that can have line of action extend through different limbs. When you're looking for the line of action in the bean shape, sometimes you're looking at the spine. Mostly you're looking at the flow of the form. If any of this is kind of going over your head or you need tangible examples, don't worry. I'm going to do a lecture right after this on my tablet to explain what I'm talking about. So we've got some line of actions here. We've got some student examples where we've got the bean and we've got a brief line of action moving through some of these. Here we've got some quick gestures that you can see. Really loose, as you can tell. Loose is what we're looking for on the first day. We really want to keep it super open and flowy. No refinement today. No really crisp, clear faces. No individual fingers. We want to have really loose flow. So this is an example of mine from a previous session where you can see I've got the beans in blue, line of action in red, all labeled, and then my form around both of them. So I like to experiment, draw a line of action first, and sometimes the bean. Experiment, try what feels good, and then switch it up. So here's a reference pose that I've got. Just a photo grabbed from a stock site. As you become quicker and more comfortable with gesturing, pushing and manipulating the pose will become easier and second nature. So I've taken this pose, I've got my bean down, I've got a line of action, the blue one, again, not quite moving through the spine nor the legs, but it's really just representing the flow of this gesture. I liked this pose. I wanted something with a bit more personality, a bit more character, something showing emotion. Again, communicating to the artist and to the audience that this isn't just, a stock photo. This isn't just a drawing of a model. This is a character who is living and breathing in their own way and has thoughts about themselves and has thoughts about the world around them. You can get a real sense of emotion from what's going on in my gesture sketch. So we've got some really classic line of action examples. I love these, this Tom and Jerry examples. So these first two up on top left, they're good drawings. The drawings themselves aren't bad, but we don't get a ton of energy, rhythm, and movement from them. Whereas when the line of actions are very strong, we strengthen the dramatic effect. It really emphasizes what is happening. So here, again, that first one, not a bad drawing, but still, we're not getting a ton of anticipation from what's going to happen. This one right here, absolutely right. Again, not a bad drawing, but we don't really, it's kind of bopping that ground. Line of action strong, action strong. So this is a concept in animation that's called staging. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but just for all you animation buffs, staging is the concept that no pose is wasted. Every drawing communicates a clear intent or emotion. So that's has a lot to do with line of action, a lot of why I love it. So here are some great line of action poses. So the thing about line of action is it doesn't always have to be action. It doesn't have to be movement, drama. Sometimes line of action can be very subtle, as you can see in a lot of the Jerry poses where he is just standing on a curve. There's enough weight shifting represented on his form. So line of action doesn't have to be super extreme, but it does have to be interesting. Line of action is always interesting. It's not just a straight up and down pose looking at you. If Jerry was just kind of standing stock still, we'd feel it was a little boring, but we've got that head tilt, we've got the hips swaying out, the chest is swung forward. It has a lot more personality than if it was just some really nice full figures. This is what you should aim your figures to look like when we do our gesture drawings. Loose, simple, quick, but we've got all of the different forms of the body. We've got feet, legs, arms, torsos, head. Sometimes you may get to hands, sometimes you may not. As long as they taper out to about there, that's what we're looking for the full form. So those are 2-minute gesture drawings. Here's a really great professional example where someone has gotten so comfortable with this concept of bean and line that they actually have a formula for drawing the bean that is more geometric. So today I'm using Kyle Webster's Clean as a Whistle brush. Just because I was feeling it this morning. So I'm actually going to do the cardinal sin. I'm working very small so that I can have this reference right next to me rather than on the screen next to me. So I'm not using my dual monitorship because I'm using you guys on my dual monitor. So here we've got a figure pose. Where do we identify the line of action on this? Line of action is going to be about here, somewhere like that. Line of action can be super loose. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I must exactly determine through the ankle the line of action. That's too medicated for me. It's too not medicated. What's the word I'm looking for? It's too, oh, I'm going to think of it. Clinical. That's the word. It's too clinical. It's too stodgy. You want your movements, again, try and think of them about coming from the shoulder, not from your wrist, really fast. In fact, if you guys want to exercise at any time outside of class or during, really nice exercises for your shoulder. Try to draw straight lines from the shoulder over and over and over and over and over again. Obviously, my leg is kicking in now. And really just making them as straight as possible from your shoulder up. So I'm going to get rid of that layer real quick and go back to this. So how do we start gesturing this? Well, we know that we've got the figure in front of us. We know that the line of action is something like that. So I like to start with the line of action first. I like to go, whoop, okay, no, yeah, see, nice leg, whoop, something like that. I know that we've got a torso here and we've got feet down there. So let's just go ahead. I'm going to do a placeholder for the head. Kind of start to identify out that torso. Again, I've got absolutely awful lag on my side, so my drawing is going to look horrendous to start with. I know the foot is somewhere down here. We got this leg kind of here. Again, I'm just doing a lot of landmark finding to start with. I'm doing really, really basic lines you'll see to start with. I know that my face is facing about this way, coming out, now that I've got my form down a little bit, I can start fleshing out a bit more of the shape, can bring this part of the leg down. I actually am having to draw slow if I want to make these lines actually appear as they should on my side. So I would encourage you guys to draw quicker than this, but I actually can't on my end, or my lag will be too much. So really, again, super fast gestures. That one's quite messy. If I wanted, I can scoot this one over. The beauty of digital Photoshop. No, come here. Move over. There you go. I want to try drawing that again. I want to do a more extreme line of action this time. Oh my goodness. There we go. I want that torso to curve even further back on that beam. Oh, do you see these angles it's making me do? It's terrible. I want to bring that leg up even further, and I'm drawing right over my other drawing. I do not care. I just want to get these poses down as fast as possible. So I want to bring this leg back even more. Come on, work with me, Photoshop. There we go. Ideally, I would be drawing the feet right away, but since I have to kind of scoot this around a little, now I'm going to bring the shoulder in a little closer to the body, about here. Make the hand on top of the leg now. Maybe make the head even more exaggerated. So just kind of playing with the gesture that you see in front of you. All right, let's see if I can actually, maybe if I zoom in, it'll be a little kinder to me. So again, drawing a head, draw a circle. I like to do the crosshairs representing the middle of the face down the skull. And then I'll just kind of make a placeholder. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of faces a little bit later. But for now, that's kind of how I like to do them. Line of action. Set your line of action. Think about your beam. What's happening with that torso? Is it coming down a certain way? Where are your legs going? Where are they ending? Figure that out right away. What's going on with your arms? Do you have a placeholder for the head? Your gestures should be extremely fast. Hopefully you won't have these lag issues that I'm having, making these look like extraordinary stick figures. Got to get a neck in here somewhere. There we go. Quick, a figure. Beautiful. That's all I'm looking for today. 30-second figures. So let's actually time me real quick. I'm going to make one out of my head. Let's set a timer. 30 seconds. And let's see how far I get. I would be amazed if I took up the entire 30 seconds, because at this point I am an extraordinarily fast drawer, as is the nature of this course. So let's go ahead and start. Line of action. Actually, no, let's do a more intense line of action. Let's do something like this. Torso is really going to be bent over. We're going to think about that head, where the arms are, coming back. Maybe a little bit more over here. Where are those legs going? Where are those legs going? Maybe right here and right here. Yeah, let's do that. Coming down. This one's coming over here. Oh, and 30 seconds. Nearly had it. Let's do it again. 30 seconds. Bending that bean forward, if my computer will let me. Thinking about, obviously not using a reference and just grabbing this out of my head. Got to have those arms bent backwards a little bit for balance happening here. Have the other one maybe, well, I don't know. Again, experiment. Don't feel like you have to erase. Keep drawing through all of your forms. Do another one real quick. This one without the timer. Sometimes I go ahead, draw the arms. Let's do that torso first. Figure out our line of action along the way. All methods are good methods to start figuring this stuff out. As long as you can have that entire form right away. And as you can see, mine are super, super messy. Made more messy by the fact, of course, that my computer is ultra lagging right now. But really quickly identifying limbs and landmarks. We're going to talk a lot about landmarks of the body today as well. So how many people have heard about landmarks of the body?
I have.
Yay. So landmarks of the body refer to easily identifiable areas on every human's body. Really popular ones are the sternum, the clavicles, the belly button, knees, wrists, joints, hips, things like that. Areas that with few exceptions change very infrequently. Mass on the body will change, volume will change, structure will change, but bones pretty much stay where they are. So as we keep gesture drawing, we'll talk about a lot of those and how to keep making them appropriately. So as we keep gesture drawing, eventually we're going to do longer poses. Longer poses, of course, will mean more detail as you keep drawing your beans and your figures. Again, today, I really want you to start with that loosey-goosey, really quick, super fast gestures. And then eventually, we're going to start seeing more finesse in your forms. We're going to start drawing more pieces of the body with a bit more accuracy, more understanding of the form. Again, this is not a figure drawing course. We're going to talk a little bit about musculature and bones, but it's not an overarching focus. It is something we will consider, and it's something you, as you keep doing life drawing in your studies, will keep learning more about. Today, I want you guys to keep it super loose. We'll probably do drawings like this as we continue on and get longer poses, but I want you to focus on that form, the rhythm, the flow, that line of action, and that beam in all of the studies that you do today. Let's open up line of action and Senshi stock so you guys can get a checkout for what those are. Line of action is a great site that lets you do figure drawing. If you just select it, you can choose all models, both types, child, teen, adult, length, 30 seconds to start with for about the first 20 minutes, I will say. We will do the first 20 minutes, we'll do 30-second drawings, all the same length. Senshi stock, on the other hand, is a similar. All right, so a very, very, very basic perspective refresher. In perspective, we have our sight line, eye line, also called the horizon line. We've got vanishing points. And any points or lines on our canvas here, endpoints are always going to connect back to all vanishing points. That's the very, very, very basic perspective knowledge you need to remember. All ends, whether they're of a line or just a point existing in space, is going to connect back to vanishing points. That means it's really easy to know how to make a box. It's really easy to know foreshortening. If you ever have trouble remembering, just drop a box or a box-like shape on a horizon line, connect all those points back to a vanishing point. Woo. And then drop some more lines, and you can make some fun shapes. It's really, this is stuff that you probably would have covered a while ago. So basically, eye line, horizon line, all vanishing points lead back to, all points lead back to the vanishing points, stuff like that. But I want to talk a little bit about how that's going to look when making a form. So when you have a form, let's say you have a complex form. So for us, we're going to make a really quick face. Now faces, of course, they have a lot of structure to them, but skulls and bones, oh, my computer's lagging again, and body parts, musculature, all of these are complex forms that we can shape out of really simple things. So you might be thinking, well, how the heck am I supposed to make complex forms out of boxes and squares? It's totally normal. For example, let's say we've got, oh my goodness, if my computer will learn not to lag. Let's say we've got, you're going to have to deal with my especially messy gestures today as I'm getting this terrible lag. Let's say we've got an arm, you know, got some musculature occurring here. Wouldn't be quite as large on this side, but we're going to go with it right now. Probably go up a little bit here. We can break down arms into thinking about cylinders. There we go. That's better. Now with cylinders in perspective, as well as boxes, cubes, and shapes, you're always going to be able to see an underside and a top side that is hidden from us. That is because of the concept of the horizon line. Anything above the horizon line, we will see we will get the perspective of the top of it. So like we'll be able to see the curve of the top. So under the horizon line, we see the underside. Oh goodness, come on computer. You can do this. And then we'll see top side, or, you know, we'll see what should be on the top side. So let's say we've got a box in perspective. I'm going to really quickly get this done so fast. Let's extend my horizon line out a little, put 2 vanishing points over here. Actually, let's just do 1 vanishing point because that's going to be easier. So if we're below the horizon line, we've got a box. We're going to see that top side. So these are actually switched. Sorry, guys. Switch. If we are above the horizon line, let's just actually, yeah, let's do that. We're going to see the underside of it. So we're going to see that part. This top part is obscured, and here the underside is obscured. That's the main thing I want you guys to remember whenever you're making forms. Forms might be coming at you in space. So the foreshortening might make it so that a cylinder is coming forward. It might make it so that a cylinder is moving away. It's going to be pretty rough. You might have balls that you could put some squares on to understand how they're rotating. You may have rectangles. These are actually more complex than they seem. You might have long ones that are leaning a little bit away. You may even have wedges or triangles. That is actually my preferred form to do feet. Now, I'm not going to make you guys do a lot of geometric shapes in perspective for practice, just because we're going to be doing a lot of that as we practice structure in the form anyway. It's something that will come naturally. The main thing I want to remind you guys of is all of your forms are always going to follow these rules, that there's a top side and an underside, and one side is always obscured. You're never going to see a cylinder that looks like so. A cylinder is going to have that underside. You're never going to see a cylinder where you can see both sides. You know, that looks odd to the eye. It looks broken. It looks wrong, because it is. Likewise, you're never going to see a cylinder that has two rounded edges. You know, you always want to make it seem very 3D. Hello. So same thing with a square. If you guys know some basic perspectives, you guys aren't going to see, I'm trying to break the perspective so that we see both sides. Is really difficult for me. It's easiest to display in a cylinder, where you're going to always see two sides. The only exception is if you're seeing that cylinder perfectly from straight on, and then it just looks like a flat rectangle. For the most part, we're going to see those tilted torus right there. Torus. There we go. Ooh. So just to remind you guys, breaking down forms can be as simple as making quick geometric figures. As you guys get more comfortable with forms of the body, you might decide that you like to do arms and legs in something that's a little bit less geometric and more organic. So for example, really classic way to display leggies is in, don't laugh at my leggies, is in this kind of curve straight to represent the musculature. And then we got some feet down here. And that might cause you to make forms that are a little bit more organic. You know, it's kind of a cylinder, but you have different variances of width on the inside. And then your foot might look like a sort of wedge shape that comes down. This is all going to lean back to when you're making objects out of perspective or in 3D space. You start with a basic box. I'm just going to make a super basic box real quick. Perspective probably won't be perfectly correct, but we'll roll with it. Come on now. And then from that box, you know, you can always find the midpoints with an X. There's a midpoint. There's a midpoint. From simple boxes, you start carving out complex shapes. You don't have to do this in such methodical detail as this, but just remembering these concepts that complex forms come from simple ones can be helpful to remember structure in character. A new layer real quick. So again, let's say we want to figure out a way to make a bean form, that torso, into something a bit more complex and start thinking about it with structure. You can start by thinking of the bean first, imagining where that line of action is, and then thinking of that front torso as a kind of box. The box for the rib cage is leaning forward. The one for the pelvis is leaning forward and down. So we would see the top of that box and not the bottom. And that would make up what would be our torso. So you can start thinking about structure like that in forms of boxes, if that makes it easier. Again, you don't necessarily need to start with structure forms. I'm just making this quick so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. We'll add some balls for the shoulder joints, not really worrying about those. Some cylinders here for arms, I'm just drawing over. And yours do not need to be this rigid. Yours can be super, super loose as well. And you don't need to follow my examples. We're going to show a lot of different ways. Structure is, as weird as it sounds, a loose concept. You can use it just the way you use line of action and bean, where you can quickly sketch something down, you know, imagine where you want your bean to go, kind of get where you want your legs to be. I think I'll make this leg leaning back, kind of like this. Have this hand coming down, add some balance to this. And then we want to start thinking about where we want that structure to be. So where the shoulders, you know, are we going to see the top part of the shoulders? Is that tilting away from us? Is it tilting forward? I'm keeping it super, super loose. Pelvis is tilting down as it often is in this pose. These we would be able to see probably that one. Thinking about your perspective again, thinking about what parts of the cylinders would be seen. Would it be the underside or would it be the top side? This is not very proportionate, but we're going with it. Gonna add, it's too big. That's a giant muscular deltoid. Gonna add some. And again, my cylinders, sometimes they're like, woo, you know, they're very Dr. Seussian cylinders. They're not necessarily like, yes, this is a cylinder. It's like, nope, this is a representation of a cylinder. That's what I'm going for. It doesn't need to be a perfect, exact science. So for this side, we would see the inner side on here, but it's covered by the box. So we don't see that area. So that means on this side, we would see the other half of that part. I'm actually going to tilt it up because I want it to be a little bit there. Yes. And then for the hands, again, hands right now can be whatever kind of shape you think is easiest to draw. I tend to kind of flesh out the thumb and then keep a weird mitt for the hands. But you can separate the fingers if you want, if you've got time. Mine tend to be very claw-like. Yours might be more square or gloved or even just represented by circles at this point. That's totally fine. We'll get into that later. This leg needs to be longer. It's going to drive me crazy. There we go. So just a really quick refresher on making structure, making boxes and shapes, keeping in mind perspective. You're always going to see one side of things unless it's perfectly straight on, and how the curvature of that changes with different shapes and from different angles. All of this will start making way more sense and feel a lot more intuitive once you start drawing. So let's go ahead and toggle over to the digital draw site. Where are you? So first I'm going to take you to the Canvas site. So this is the new assignment that's been uploaded. It was just our line of action, being structure studies, and it'll take you right to these sections. So I'm going to use those. So you would click on this one and it would take you to structure in character. So we're going to talk a little bit about structure in character. So I'm going to have you guys watch a couple of videos on your own screens rather than on this one. Otherwise, it'll be, I think the audio will just be too scratchy and glitchy for everybody. So we're going to watch a little bit about a character design tutorial by Drew Hill. That's going to go through his structure studies and his methods. You can see that his structure is a lot like mine. It's more organic than it is rigid box shape. It's more wedges. I describe it as looking like cheese. It looks like pieces of cheese. You know, it's kind of been nibbled on. It's a little rounded around the edges. We're still displaying volume and form, but we're not necessarily making it like cylinders, boxes, triangles. It is organic. You can mess with whatever methods work for you if you want to try out really rigid first and then move to more organic if that's easier. Again, you guys need to experiment with what works for you. So here's a little quick example from me from a couple semesters ago. So structure helps inform perspective and volume. Experiment with shapes that work for you. Your shape language is going to develop from these practices. So shape language applies to the way that you like to depict form. Every artist does it a little differently. Shape language is going to be very intuitive and will develop throughout your artistic career. It may change many times, just like style, but it is important to start developing it so that you have a real understanding of how shape plays into design. So you can see a lot of the times I will use a mask, a flat mask shape for trying to define my head shape. Beans sometimes start out as those two circles within a frame, and then I'll add some boxy shapes onto them. Sometimes they're more like a wedge-shaped torso So here we have a couple more. These are going to look a lot like those mannequins that you see a lot of the time. Again, these structures are very organic. They're not necessarily super hugely perfect geometric. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to suggest form, but not necessarily in a super methodical like way that this is, this is a cylinder. We want to keep it loosey, we want to keep it goosey, as always with gestures. We want to keep it really, really flowy. So here we've got some great experimentations here with some structure variety in different forms. A lot of the time on the class site, we will have draw over examples where we'll have a student example on top and then a draw over underneath where we show things that could be changed to improve the overall drawings. So these are hugely useful. A lot of the times they're by James Sir, one of our favorite draw over guests, but it'll always say on the bottom who is the one doing the draw overs. So right here, we've got some more gesture sketches. We've had a little bit of more time to develop these. Again, always aim to try and capture the full figure. Don't stop short of the torso and cut it off. But we have some structure underlying in these that you can start to see being developed. You can see structure in the layers here, underneath in the blue lines. Some more pretty simple structure. Again, just working with boxes, just pieces of cheese, just wedges of cheese here. That's all it is. Some more structure underneath as we work with some more gestures. And sketching out more gesture again, structure. We're getting into some interesting shading here as we've got some experimentation going on. Oh, hang on, there we go. Someone's trying to get in. There we go. Some photo reference gesture sketches there. And then we've got a couple of videos down at the bottom. One on making things look 3D. This is very, very similar to what I just explained to you guys in the demo. I keep it in here in case you need a refresher. I would say only watch this one if you want to see a lot of geometric structure, very, very detailed on accuracy. But the one that I would really like you guys to watch is the landmarks of the body, Stan Prokopenko. This is going to help you guys not only to develop an understanding of proportion and form within the anatomy of the body, but also help you figure out where you want to put your shapes and an easy way to remember how they apply to all different body forms. Because like I said before, the skeletal structure is really something that does not change very much from human to human. Mass, volume, shape, form does, but the bones pretty much stay the same. So if you can learn a lot of these landmarks and especially learn how to apply them to your particular style, to your wheelhouse, to your industry that you want to be a part of, that's what's going to be the most useful. Common ones are going to include things like ears, jawline, clavicle, sternum, belly button, where the hips, and all joints, wrists, elbows, knees, ankles, etc. So before we move to practice structure, I want to give you guys a little bit of time to watch these videos. The Drew Hill one is 18 minutes long, but you will only need to watch it till I think about, let me see real quick.
The closest.
Let's see real quick. Not even, I mean, you can watch the whole thing if you'd like. It's fantastic. Let's see here.
The character is also.
No. There we go. So I'd say till about, anywhere between, right before the 5 minutes and 30 seconds mark is where you need to watch this one. You can keep watching the whole thing if you'd like, but make sure you watch at least the first 5 minutes because that's going to include Drew Hill's methods on structure and gesture and landmarks of the body as well. So Stan Prokopenko, you may watch the structure one if you'd like. If you need a refresher on that more than the one I just gave, but definitely watch the landmarks of the body. And I would say watch the landmarks of the body one first, and then move up to watch the Drew Hill one. And then we'll meet back up again to see if anyone has any questions on that, to do a quick refresher again before we move into gesture sketches that include structure. So you may continue watching those videos, the ones that are optional or the part of the Drew Hill, on your own time. Let's take about, so this one's 7 and 5. Let's take about 15 minutes or so to get these loaded up and watched. So the Stan Prokopenko one in the first about 5 minutes and 30 seconds of the Drew Hill video. So I will check in with you guys at about 1:25 and I'll give you all a chance to watch those videos. all right, so we were on the structure and character page right over here. We're going to toggle over to the bean and structure site or page right here. So combining the bean and structure. So talked a little bit about this in my brief demo, putting boxes on top of the bean, putting shapes on top of the bean, making the bean into a more geometric-like structure, how that would progress from gesture into character. Obviously, all of these details would be added last as you do them. So I want you guys to check out this little drawing I did a couple semesters ago for line of action, the bean, and structure. So line of action, obviously, as we've been learning, follows the energy and movement of the pose and usually aligns along the spine. Even with a simple pose, adding weight and a good line of action can make it interesting. The bean, simple small shape that helps define and simplify movement. And then we're going to be adding in the last part, which is structure. Structure helps us remember and find planes and volume in the body, and also foreshortening, tilt, etc. From these foundations, we build our habits, hands, and eyes to see and build dynamic poses and strong lines. So you can kind of see from my first sketch, the blue line of action, the orange first gesture and bean, and then the green overlaying structure. And then I've refined that, pushed the pose just a little bit to make the arc of the back go a little forward, made it a little bit wider in between the legs, and we've got a nice pose at the end there. So we've got some student examples down here of what we're going to be doing as we move forward with our gesture sketches. Still going to be doing line of action and bean, and we're going to be adding structure on top or alongside of it. You don't necessarily need to make new layers for your structure. You can just keep drawing right on top of them. You can do a new layer if you want to, but if you want to make it quicker, you can just go right on top. So we can see you've got a lot of boxes. Boxes are great. You can experiment with lots of different forms, especially like in the Drew Hill tutorial. He's got some very organic form that he works with. So I really want you guys to take the time that we're going to have to draw, which is pretty much going to be the rest of the session, to really experiment with all of that form, with all of that structure, how you want your planes and your shape language to start looking. If you have no idea where to start, just start with boxes and work your way from there. So we're going to be using the line of action site and the Senshi stock site one again as well. We are going to start with 30-second gestures, but just kind of to get warmed back up into it and see if we can start adding structure in right away. If you can start kind of training your brain to start thinking about structure. It doesn't really matter if you get the structure down within the 30-second ones, because that's quite a short time to add in structure. I just want you to start thinking about how you're going to start adding structure. So even though you may not get structure in that 30 seconds, you are going to start thinking about it.